Hello, everyone. This is MMA Interesting Prospects podcast. Today, our guest is Kegan Gennrich, who will fight on chosen few FC for welterweight title January 25th. Hello, Kegan. How are you?
I'm well, man. How are you? Thanks for having me again.
I'm good, and we will talk about your next fight in just a moment. But when we speak last time, it was after your fight against Richie Miranda, which I think that was like a really big win. But if we can talk a bit about your like next LFA bout. Because the next one it was LFA 168, and you fought against Donald Bush, a very good grappler, very good submission fighter, and
Yes, sir.
I believe that you are the only fighter ever who submit him. So if you can tell me how did you feel
I didn't know
after
that,
this
bro.
bout?
That you did your research. I didn't even know that. That's an interesting fact.
Yes,
I didn't.
he almost like submit everyone, and he never lost by submission. So you are the only one.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. That's a good feather in my cap. Donald Bush. I called him the crazy Florida guy, crazy Florida man. He was an interesting guy, man. That guy loved to fight. As I was beating him up and making him bleed, it seemed like he was having the time of his life in there. But yeah, Donald had a an impressive record coming in and a very experienced fighter and in different areas. He's mentioned the submissions, but he's also had bare knuckle boxing fights and stuff like that. So that's a tough dude who loves to fight. So um, I didn't realize I was the only guy to tap him out, but that's cool.
And of course, he at that point got a very good 8-2 record. And after you beat him, when actually did you find out that your next bout will be for the title?
Uh, I can't after I tapped out Donald, I went right up to the matchmaker and the president, and I was calling for my shot, and they go, call out Jacoby, call out Jacoby. So I think that was kind of uh, a number one contender type fight, or that was the last thing they needed to see me do. So I think I had a good idea pretty much right after the fight, and then me and Jacoby exchanged some messages after that about me calling him out. So it was on pretty quick after that fight with Donald.
And of course, in your next fight, you fought for the title. Your opponent was Jacoby Jones, and he was a champion. He actually fought in the Contender Series. And did you feel any like pressure that this is like your big fight, your big moment?
Yeah, I did feel like that was a moment, a big moment for me, and one that I had to make sure I capitalized on. And I had a great training camp for that fight. And as fighters, we always try to visualize us winning, and eventually doubt and some negativity creeps in. But that was for the first time in my career. I had an interesting moment after training one day where I almost like an out of body experience where I saw myself in that cage winning the belt, and I almost just knew that that was my moment, and a accumulation of a lot of years um a lot of years of hard work, and I felt good going into that. And I knew Jacoby would be a tough test. The guy he beat to get to the belt was a stud, and so is Jacoby. He only, had that loss on the Contender Series to a guy who was also undefeated. Um, so, but yeah, that felt like a big moment for me, and I thought I was gonna have a chance to get signed or get a Contender Series fight after that, but the MMA game is a funny one, and you never know quite what kind of hand you're gonna get dealt. So I just been rolling with it, and I'm in a spot for another exciting main event and title fight, and that's all I can really ask for at this point is for big fights on big stages. That's what gets me out of bed and training hard every morning. So I'm excited about it.
But but actually, Jones was a really like accomplished wrestler, and you dominated him and finished him late in the fight. So I think that also showed that you are a super dangerous guy, even like in the fourth or even fifth round.
I agree with that, and that was a good confidence booster, knowing that I could do the championship rounds, and I think that's a big advantage I have going into this next fight. Is this will be Garrett's first 5 round fight, and it'll be my third 5 round fight in a row. Um, so I feel good about having the LFA just put out an interesting stat. I fought 47 minutes in the LFA cage last year, and that was only in 2 fights. So I feel like I'm going to bring a little bit of an experience advantage over 5 rounds, hopefully.
And actually, I thought that after Jacoby Jones fight, you will get a like Contender Series shot because you won probably the biggest belt outside of the like outside of the like biggest organizations. So I really hope that you will like get your shot. But in the end, you got a fight against Richie Lewis, who was I believe a Titan FC. Champion and who is also
Yeah.
very who was and is a very impressive guy. And
Yeah.
what did you think after this performance against Luis?
I was a little bit frustrated coming out of the cage. It was a tough fight, a little bit down on myself, but every time I go back and watch it, I certainly had some moments in that fight. I won some rounds in that fight. I think maybe a little bit different of a game plan could have worked to my advantage. I really thought I was going to finish Richie at some point in the 5 rounds, and that was my mentality. I think maybe if I try to steal a couple more rounds in there, take it round by round a little bit more, but that's not really ever been my style. I'm a finisher. My mentality is I'm going in there to finish at some point, but lessons learned at a high level, there's got to be a little bit more strategy involved, and I'm certainly not taking anything away from Richie. I'm not saying it would have gone differently either way, but feel like I was very competitive in that fight. Learned a lot that I think I'll be able to take into this fight, and I really and speaking of guys who haven't gotten signed yet, I didn't get signed after beating Jacoby. Richie didn't get signed after beating me. Right now, it looks like getting signed at lightweight in the UFC is pretty dang tough to do if a guy like Richie hasn't even been signed. He's gonna fight. He's gonna fight in LFA again. Him and Richie Miranda are gonna fight each other. So I think it just goes to show how deep those divisions are in the UFC right now, and it's not gonna be an easy road to get there either way. Um, but I'm grateful for the experience and for every step of my journey. So it'll just be more rewarding when I get there.
Yes, but in the end, you have like 11 pro fights right now, but you fought like with many killers. So in the end, you have this kind of experience, and when you get to the big show, it's not that you will that your next opponent would be your like biggest challenge because probably you fought someone like this on the like very similar level.
I think so too. I think there's 3 or 4 or 5 guys even on my record. Evan Elder is in the UFC. Jacoby Jones was on the Contender Series. Richie Miranda is going to be in the UFC. Richie Lewis. I agree with what you're saying, and I think um, that will pay dividends for me. I think I will be prepared, and I'm proud to say that I've taken the hard fights, and you know, even if I don't, knock on wood, I'm gonna keep working to get there. But even if I don't get there, I think I've earned the respect of a lot of high level fighters, and that's really kind of why I got in the sport in the first place. Obviously to accomplish some goals, but just to have the respect of some of my peers in the sport was kind of what I was aiming for from the start. So um, I think I've done that. I really think that the only thing I have left to do is fight and win in the UFC. So um, not looking past this one. I think I'm definitely, this title fight, this main event, it was something I'm asking for, and I was having a hard time getting fights at 55 that made a lot of sense. So I'm excited about this opportunity. I think it's a great challenge, moving up in a division, and if I can win a professional belt in a second weight class, that'd be a big thing. And then the UFC sees that they can sign me short notice in 2 different divisions, which doubles my chances, hopefully, of getting in.
I also think what is important about your experience that you fought against like a few very good wrestlers. So of course you are a grappler yourself, but in the end you know that you can like defend the takedowns. You can take really good grapplers on the ground. So I think that this experience is also important. Not that your like next opponent will be the next opponent or opponent after this will be like the biggest challenge in the like wrestling department because you fought you fought
Yeah,
against great wrestlers.
yeah. I just fought, a freestyle world champ. It doesn't get much higher level than that. So I agree, and he got to see where I can improve in that department. And it's interesting that I came up as a wrestler and as a grappler, but now I have a lot of other tools in my bag too. And um, but yeah, those wrestlers are those. It's funny to say those dang wrestlers are a tough matchup. Being a wrestler myself, but I tend to think of myself a lot more as an MMA fighter these days than a wrestler. I have wrestled and I am a wrestler, absolutely. But I think if you watch my style, that's not the first thing that you would take away. But I think my well-roundedness at a high level is what makes me effective. I can wrestle the strikers. I can be better than the strikers in wrestling, and I can be better than the grapplers, better than the wrestlers in the striking. So it gives me a chance to try to take the fight a few different ways.
So in your next fight, you will fight for the welterweight championship in chosen few FC, and this is promotion that actually you fought a few times and you are undefeated there.
Yes, sir. I love Madison. I went to school there for a year. I wrestled for the Badgers for a year. In Wisconsin, that's where they host the high school state wrestling championship. So I won a state wrestling championship in Madison when I was in school. So I feel the good luck and I feel the good vibes. And Chosen Few puts on a nice, clean show. They take good care of their fighters. Last time I was there, I won fight of the night. Um, and they handed out a belt for fight of the night, which actually I got robbed. I got burglarized, and they stole my fight of the night belt. So now I got to win a belt. I got to win a belt now and get it back. I got a belt to replace, which is a little bit um added fuel to the fire. But no, I'm excited. If you can't get excited for a title fight and a main event, it's probably time to retire. So I think it's perfect and it's right where I want to be.
And actually, your opponent, Garrett Carlson, I think that maybe he has not like the biggest name, but he's a very good fighter overall. He got few good wins on his record.
He's fought some tough guys too. He hasn't strayed away. He's got some decent names on his resume, and I think he's on a four-fight winning streak. Um, to his credit, um, I think I always try to give my opponents much props as I can because it looks better than when I win. And I wouldn't have taken this fight if it was an easy fight. I took it because I respect Garrett. I respect the gym that he's out of. If you watch him fight, he's clearly a tough guy. He's got a chip on his shoulder. He fights with some tenacity. He gets after it. I don't think he's as smooth technically as me in some areas, but he definitely gets after it, and he's gonna bring the fight to me. So yeah, I took this fight because I think it's a great challenge for me moving up a weight, and he's a tough guy on a four-fight winning streak, and he's got a win would do some big things for him too. So I'm training hard and taking it as seriously as I've taken all the fights um, in my career. So I look forward. I think it's gonna be a great fight. I think it's gonna be. I think ultimately I have the bigger skill set, the bigger heart, the bigger gas tank. But he's gonna get after it, and he's not gonna give me anything. It's not gonna be an easy fight any of the time that we're in there. He's gonna go in there and give it his all. I'm sure of it. So I'm preparing for a tough fight for as long as we're in there.
And because this is a welterweight fight, were there any difference in your training camp, in your preparation for this one?
Yeah, I can eat. Um, Yeah, a lot less focus on counting my calories and maintaining my weight, which I think has made an overall difference in just how I'm feeling on a day-to-day basis. Not as worn down, not taking as many small injuries. I think with a little bit more weight on my frame, being fully fueled and fully rested every day has seemed to make a difference in my energy levels and my health. Um, in a general sense, not like getting sick because I'm worn down from not eating enough and stuff like that. So I feel healthy. I feel strong. Um, I feel like 170 is going to be a good fit for me. I feel like I'll be just as strong in the grappling aspects with my leverage and my technical skills. And then I think if you watch my fights at lightweight, the thing I struggle with the most is probably the speed of the lightweights. Like a quick guy like Jacoby Jones was a handful for me to deal with on the feet, but I think the welterweights in general will be a little bit slower, a little bit easier for me to deal with um, in that aspect of the fight. Certainly, bigger, stronger guys will offer a different challenge, but I think my style will wear the 170 pounders out just as much. And I expect that I'll be able to go up and down. I could make 55 right now. I'm eating as much as I can to stay at an appropriate weight for welterweight, like almost eating more than I want to, eating an extra dinner to stay up at welterweight. So I don't think 55 is out of the picture again someday at all. I think I'll make my way back down there someday. But I feel good, man. My coach was a welterweight, so he's been able to give me a lot of good advice in that sense. Um, and most of my training partners are a little bit bigger anyways, so I'm not too worried about it.
And like I mentioned, I thought that after Jones fight, you will get like a Contender Series fight. And do you think that this will be possible for you to win this one, maybe another one, and in this year get like this kind of opportunity?
Yeah, well, the Contender Series will come back around in the summer, and with the management team that I'm with, I'm always hopeful that something short notice or Contender Series will pop up. I'm with Iridium Sports, which in my opinion, the top agency getting these short notice fights or getting these Contender Series opportunities. So I think I'm in the right spot. Really, what they're telling me is that I just need to get back on a winning streak, and anything is possible. So a win here, and I think anything can happen at any time. And making a statement at 170, shows the UFC that they could call me in two different weight classes. Like I said earlier, I think that gives me a leg up on the competition or the other guys trying to get in. But then, if that doesn't happen, now I have a belt at 170 and I can defend that. So I think all the opportunities moving forward are exciting, whether I move up or whether I get to defend this belt, in essentially in front of a hometown crowd. I'm only be about 90 minutes from Madison, so it'll be be like a home fight for me. So, you know, whatever happens. I just want to keep taking big fights, exciting fights. So whether that's in the UFC, whether that's, back in the LFA, fighting another top contender there would be certainly be possible, or defending this belt. But they're all the options are exciting at this point. So I'm grateful for that.
Yes, I think also that this is great that you can like fight in the lightweight, welterweight division. So there are like really good matchups in the regional scene and in the UFC also. You can be like a very good matchup for many fighters like that. It would be an exciting fight against you.
Since the last time that we talked, I actually accepted a fight in the UFC on a week's notice, and it ended up going to someone else. But if and it would have been a tough ass fight. Ludovic Klein, they were looking for a fight with Ludovic months back, and I accepted it on 1 or 2 weeks notice, and they ended up giving it to AJ Cunningham, who got smoked, but he got a contract out of it, and he's in the UFC. And I don't like to talk about this very much because we all turn down fights. We're all looking for the right matchup. But AJ Cunningham turned me down multiple times in the LFA. You know what I'm saying? So I'm close. The UFC has my name. We've been in contact. I'm as close as you can get, I think, without getting in. So I'm going to take care of business, win another belt, and then hopefully make myself undeniable at some point.
So it's actually a great news that you are on the radar, and then this is like a big chance that you will be there really soon.
Yes, I hope so.
And in I believe 1 week there will be a big lightweight fight, Islam Makhachev against Arman Sarukian.
Yeah.
Who do you think will win this fight?
I'm a pretty big fan of Islam and Khabib and all those guys. Especially, Islam's style is much more similar to mine than Khabib's. I think Islam has a little bit more finesse in his game. He's not in too much of a hurry to get to the grappling. He kind of takes his time and lets the fight unfold and picks his spots where he can. So Islam is definitely a guy I'm studying, watching a lot, fighting. So I'm gonna be pulling for Islam, and I think he'll get it done. Um, I haven't put a lot of thought into how or when or what, but if you're asking who I'm rooting for, probably, well, not probably, definitely Islam. So that's someone I look up to as a fighter. I like the way that whole crew kind of handles their business. They're super humble. They let their fighting do the talking for them. So I like Arman too. I don't think less of Arman, but I'll be pulling for Islam.
And for now, do you have one fighter that you really like watching his fights?
Yeah, Islam's right up there. I'm trying to think some other guys that maybe Tim Means, who isn't the biggest name anymore. I try to watch guys who I think I can mimic a little bit or things or guys' style that I can pull from. And that's a lot of different guys, but I try to look for guys with similar attributes as I do and see how they're using what they got to have success at a high level. So, that's a pretty random one. Tim Means. Trying to think about who else I've been watching. I'm not a fan of him at all personally, but Colby Covington, the earlier version of Colby Covington, I think his style and the way that he pushes the pace with the volume striking and the volume wrestling, that's something that I'm definitely trying to pull from. So again, not a fan of him as a fan, but I will watch his fights and try to pull from him. Covington, and then one other guy I really like, style Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Super, super pressure grappler, insane gas tank. So that's someone I've been watching a little bit more recently would be Anthony Hernandez. Um, but as I get closer and closer to the UFC, I almost watching some of those guys more like competition than anything. But I'm always watching the fights. If I'm eating dinner, I don't have cable TV, but I have UFC Fight Pass, and I joke that that's just as good as having cable. There's so many different fights and things to watch on Fight Pass, so I'm almost always watching some sort of fight if I'm not training. Those are just a few of the guys.
Yes, and you mentioned Anthony Hernandez. I remember 4 years ago he submitted Rodolfo Vieira, and it was a big surprise because at that point he was, I believe, a purple belt, and it was really big surprise. And now he's ranked in top 10 probably.
Yeah, he just had a big fight in his last Pereira. Is that who he just beat? The
Yes,
crap,
yes.
he had a main event. Yeah, it just goes to show when you get guys tired in the cage, you can beat if you can get someone tired, you can beat anyone. So I really enjoy his style. I think he's a handful in there. Trying to think of who else. Umar, I watched quite a bit of Sean. I think Sean O'Malley is pretty dope. He switches stances a lot like I do. I steal some things from Sean O'Malley. Corey Sandhagen, I like as a personality and as a fighter. He seems like a really cool dude. I like watching him. Those are the guys I've been watching a lot lately.
And right now you are in MMA game for many years, and you have this kind of crazy experience for the fighter. And what do you think is necessary to be a world class fighter?
Oh, I think it takes, I mean, well, either you got to come from a really, really, really strong background, like world champion wrestler or world champion kickboxer, but even that, they've been built a lifetime, really a lifetime of martial arts or a lifetime of some sort of competition that's involved in MMA. And then on top of that, you got to be durable. You got to be able to, fighting's hard and it hurts. So, and I think you got to be like willing to go through the lows, and we get hurt a lot in training. We don't have a lot of money. It's a grind. It's tough. We're sick. It's just a lot of things. So I think persistence is the biggest thing. There's a lot of really talented guys. There's a lot of guys way more talented than me that didn't make it nearly as far as I did because at the first sign of inconvenience, they got a real job or they decided to have nothing wrong with that, have a family instead. But it's going to be a long, long grind of not getting a lot out of it um, at first. So you just kind of, it seems silly to say you got to be really, really freaking tough and you got to be able to get by, without having a lot sometimes. And there's a lot of the highs are really high, but the lows are really low. So I think persistence and consistency and uh it's a hard road, but I think it's certainly been worth it to be able to do something I'm passionate about every day. It's hard, but I think I would be more miserable having a regular job and stuff like that. So I'm grateful for all the years I've been able to do this, and I just want to make the most out of it while I can. And
So
insane conditioning. People don't realize how hard MMA is. MMA athletes are some of the most well-conditioned athletes on the planet. It is the level of conditioning, I think, is what most people watching the fights don't understand.
and actually, fighters with great conditionings, like conditioning, I think that I'm also a really big fan of them. Like back in the day, Nick Diaz, right now, Merab Dvalishvili, like you mentioned, Covington, but not a persona, but a fighter. If you can, if you have cardio, you can break people in the end.
Mhm. Yep, and I don't hit the hardest, so I kind of got to outlast guys. Some guys got natural built-in power. I think I probably have a more naturally built for conditioning. So I think I saw someone talking about it. We all have our own superpower as fighters, and it's kind of up to you to figure out what that superpower is and then mold your game around that. Some guys, Khalil Roundtree, hit like a Mack truck, so his games were all revolved around that. Nate Diaz can do a triathlon all day, so he revolves his game around that. I think it's kind of about finding out what your strengths are and then molding your game around it. But I forgot about the Diaz brothers. I'm huge fans of those guys too.
So what is like official prediction for your next fight?
Oh man, I've never been a big, huge prediction guy. I predict that I'm gonna win. I'm gonna predict that I'm gonna do whatever it takes, to get the win. I even if I predict. Now I don't even want to say what I predict because then I'm kind of talking about my game plan and stuff like that in my head, and I have an idea of how I want the fight to go. But what I'll say is, I predict that I'll be a step ahead everywhere, standing on the ground. I think I'll have the conditioning edge. But I certainly think Garrett is a tough dude, and a respectable opponent. My only prediction is that I'm gonna get my hand raised at the end and get another belt wrapped around my waist. That's what I predict.
Okay, Kegan. So many thanks for the conversation. I hope that in just few weeks you will get another belt to your collection, and I hope that this year we can see you in the UFC, either in the lightweight division or welterweight division.
Yes, thank you for having me. You always do a great interview. It was nice to be back on.